Welcome, Mr. Wallace here. So this is the lesson I'm going to be presenting today. Um, it's kind of shown as the lesson and my notes at the bottom. The notes is really just for this presentation purpose. The students would only be seeing the top portion. So they would come into the Zoom classroom and they would see there on their screen, February 2024. Today's lesson title is Adding and Subtracting Fractions. Today's lesson objective is students will be able to add and subtract fractions with the like denominators by the end of the lesson. And then I'll kind of make it a point to engage students within the first 3 minutes that they're coming into the Zoom classroom. And I'll either prompt them to share prior knowledge around this topic of adding and subtracting fractions and what they might know. They can do this one of two ways. They can either use the Zoom chat feature, or they could have verbal dialogue, either me or their peers, if that's proving fruitful. And then I'll kind of take this opportunity to let them know that we'll be going throughout this presentation. We'll be doing a couple different activities. We'll be using a Jamboard, as well as reviewing fractions, going over vocabulary, modeling, adding and subtracting fractions, and doing some examples together. So that would move us right into the next slide that I got here. And this has two links, and they could either do it independently by themselves by clicking the links and videos, or I could even click it and share it on my screen, which I'm going to do with you shortly. And then that way I know as a whole class, we're at the same place. So if I'm clicking the first link, and I already have it pulled up here, it's a little more student friendly one, Brain Pop. So I'd play the video for the class.
Are those pies for the bake sale? I sure like pie. Please? Oh. Dear Tim and Moby, I want to know how to add and subtract fractions. From Joshua. Well, pies are perfect for talking about fractions. As you can see, this is one pie. That's one part of one whole, or 1/1 in fraction form. If I cut the pie right down the middle, I get two pieces. Each piece is 1 divided by 2, or 1.
So I'm going to stop the video there. But for the class, I would play the video through. There are key engagement pieces or places throughout this video where it's going to potentially can be stopped, and I can post comprehension questions to the students. They can either have that dialogue with me, share in the chat, things like that. Just kind of get them thinking about the learning taking place. After that, we're going to move right into the next mini lesson. And you might be familiar with Khan Academy. That's where this video is from. It's a little more academic based. There's more modeling going on.
This should hopefully be a relatively easy question. If I were to ask you what 1/4 plus 1/4 is, let's think about what that means. Let's say we had a pie and it was divided into 4 pieces. So this is like saying this first 1/4 right here, let me do it in a different color. This 1/4 right here, let's say it's this 1/4 of the pie, right? And we're going to add it to another 1/4 of the pie. Let's make it.
So you can see he's using the numbers there, modeling the fraction. But he's also showing us the model, what that would look like,
This 1/4 is this 1/4
helping make that visual
so if I
connection
were
for
to eat
students.
both 1/4s, or 1/4 and then I eat another 1/4, how much have I eaten? Well,
And I'm going to stop this one here, but a lot like the second one, there's a lot of places throughout the video that I can stop and ask students questions. I can have students kind of come up with examples. I can have students ask each other questions as well. I would let this video play through before returning back to the presentation where I'm about to take us. And then I'll kind of just recap the learning that took place between two videos. Once I feel like we have a good grasp on the concept, I'm going to move us on to our partner or independent work activity. And for this, we're going to use a Jamboard. Students can either choose to work by themselves or with a partner on this Jamboard activity. And they'll essentially be adding and subtracting fractions with like denominators. They're going to use the Jamboard to put their examples in, kind of like the videos that we saw beforehand. and I'm going to switch my screen here to show you kind of an example. So here's the Jamboard that's set up, and I insert a couple images that students might have pulled from the side images here to model uh, adding and subtracting fractions. And then a student also likes to show what that looks like using the pies, which is what we have here. They're students and they're probably going to be partnered with their friends. They're going to play with a little bit. So you see here, someone drew hi with a little smiley face to their friend as they're working. That's fine as long as they're being productive. And again, that adds that engagement piece, that adds in that social interaction piece, which I absolutely don't mind for this activity. Going back to the presentation, once that is done, or there's a certain amount of time that was up on, bring us back together, that's when we're kind of move into the closing portion of this. We're going to review the Jamboards together, and the students are going to have an opportunity to display their work to their classmates, to explain their work, to answer questions, if there's any kind of misconceptions, things like that. This really gives students a chance to present and interact with their classmates, with me acting as the facilitator. And then we'll kind of move into that flex time, which I'm going to have students practice the problems with adding, subtracting fractions. The goal is for them to turn in 3 problems before the end of the class session. And they can do this either simply by typing in the chat using that Zoom chat feature, or they can use a whole class Jamboard that I had set up in one of those links. And then as they're doing that, I'll kind of just close out the class, letting them know and review the objective and the title of the lesson again, and transition on out, which then takes us back into our regular Zoom class here, which I would finish engaging the students. I would check their work. If there needs to be any redirections or try again, things like that, any reteaching opportunities, this would be a good time before essentially telling them to have a good rest of their day or whatever it might be before moving on. So that concludes this learning lesson. Thank you.